I actually lived in San Bernardino County before this happened. One of the rare multiple shooters, right? Husband and wife team. You know what they say, if you want to stay together as husband and wife, go do things together, right? So they did that.
Throwing targets are lightweight, weatherproof, take thousands of rounds of shooting and make shooting fun. Pick up a set for your next range trip.
The male of the two worked at this county building. He was a county employee. He worked at a county building. The county employees were having a Christmas party in the county building. He shows up at this party. He was seen at the party, and then he left the party kind of early. And he went home and typed some radical Islam stuff on the internet, suited up his wife, took their child to one of the grandparents to leave, because you can't take them on holy jihad, right? And they had GoPro cameras on their helmets. Now, why would they do that?
So they can put it on Al Jazeera.
That's right. And you got to live. You got to survive and escape in order to do that, right? So then they come back into this Christmas party. They got face masks on, and so they shoot, and they know we want to escape to put these videos on what great jihadists we are. So they know they got about a 3-minute window. Go in there and shoot and leave, and they do that. And they drive away in their rented SUV. One of the employees in there said, you know, one of those shooters, I know they were wearing face masks, but one of those shooters, just the way he moved, reminded me of that employee that was here earlier, right? Well, what's his name? Humpty Humpty Hump, okay? They drove away in an SUV, and somebody got the license plate, a black SUV with this license plate. That was put out on the news that some guy heard. That guy was driving down a road nearby, and he sees a dark black SUV radically pull in front of him and then do a radical left-hand turn into a park. Hey, I just heard on the radio about an SUV with this license plate. I just saw this vehicle do a hard, radical turn in front of me. They run the license plate. It's a rental. They call the rental people. Who'd you rent it to? Humpty 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 Hump, the name of the guy that's the employee that these guys had fingered. So this all happened real quick. Cops go to that house and they wait. And sure enough, eventually they drive by their own house in that SUV. There they are. Here goes the chase. They eventually get them closed in on, and the wife is in the back of the SUV shooting out the back window at the cops. So again, they're not just going to clock out. It's over. The wife is shooting out the back window at these cops, chasing them down these urban streets. Eventually, they get them hemmed in and pinned in. The wife stays in the vehicle. The male gets out. They hit the male a couple times with AR rounds. He bends over at the waist and eventually falls over, pulls his pistol out of his thigh holster, and starts shooting from the ground. So again, just because you shoot him to the ground doesn't mean this thing is over. Cops fired over 300 rounds in that final little fight. Yeah, cops tend to get trigger happy when they get them in. One cop was shot in this final episode, and another cop got shrapnel in his leg as the bullet went through the door of his vehicle. Cops had no effect on the actual shooting at the event center, but when they finally pinned him down here. So yeah. All right, so Greg Stevens, at the time I believe was 59 years old. Up until a year or two before this, he had been a motorcycle cop. An old, fat motorcycle cop. And I say that with absolutely no respect. He is a hero. I love this guy. But again, yeah, he's a cop, but you ain't got to be a ninja SWAT operator to do this. He was a 59-year-old cop. So they were having a Draw Muhammad contest. They knew this was going to draw some negative attention, so they paid booties load of money to have not only cops there, but a lot of very high-end armed security, okay? And Greg says in a video, I have not met Greg, unfortunately, he's out on a back corner of the property. Ain't nothing gonna happen back here. He says, all we had back here was delivery trucks coming in, right? So he's here with an unarmed security guard who's there with him, hanging out. So he says, first, car drives up very erratically, just the way it's driving. He said, that was the first thing that caught my attention. Second thing is it abruptly stops in a place that's not a parking spot. It just stops right there. That kind of got my attention. And then it had pulled past me far enough that I could see the plates were out of state, Arizona. And they're in Dallas, Texas, basically. Over 1,000 miles away, by the way. If they'll drive 1,000 miles to come shoot up this place, will they drive across the county to shoot your church or your kid's school up? You're darn right they will. So Greg's standing right about here. You know, the driver has to put it into drive, undo the key and everything, so the passenger gets out first with an SK rifle and starts shooting. The unarmed security guard standing next to Greg says, I thought it was a prank, I thought it was airsoft. But Greg draws his Glock 21 and starts advancing on the guy with the rifle shooting at them. And shoots this guy numerous times and shoots him to the ground right there beside his car. And then Greg comes around the back of the car. His driver is now getting out of the car, and Greg shoots him a number of times until he draws to the ground. And then Greg goes back over here. This guy is still squirming around with his rifle on the ground, so Greg pumps some more into him. And then he comes back over here, and Greg said, this guy is doing a push-up, like he's trying to push himself up off the ground. So Greg gives him a second helping, which takes his Glock to slide lock, and he does an emergency reload. And by that time, some of the high-end paid security shows up and kind of peppers them a little bit with AR-15s to finish them off. They both had AK rifles, and they both had body armor, like no kidding body armor. There's what they cut off of them. But some of Greg's rounds went in up here through the shoulder, armpit, so he got, even though they had body armor and he only had a pistol, he got some through. Okay, 59-year-old fat motorcycle cop did that. Okay, radical Islam. One good armed guy with a gun, close enough to hear it or see it, that did something about it, and that's the solution. Okay. So we had they're so very similar. San Bernardino, 2 radical Islam working together show up at a place with rifles, intent on a lot of casualties, and they get 31 before they voluntarily leave because they want to escape. Could have got more, but got 31 easily. 2 radical Islam motivated with rifles and body armor show up in Garland, Texas to also get a high body count. They get 1. And that 1 was the passenger shooting at them hit the concrete sidewalk next to the unarmed guard, and some of the concrete shrapnel went into his leg. That was the one before Greg Stevens put him down.
So that was the one casualty.
That was the one, yeah. Right. That was the one casualty. Another thing Greg said, he goes, you know, normally if a cop does an on-duty shooting, he's gone, right? They pull him off, paid administrative leave, you know, sequestered, you know. They kept him on there, it was up on the slide, I think 7 to 9 hours, because what they thought was this might be the first wave, this might have been a diversion, there might be more coming. So great job, Greg, get back out there. And so he said, I'm back, I'm standing out there security, but they kept me on duty for another 7, 9 hours before I finally got off.
So here's
They better pay him overtime.
What's that?
Should have paid him overtime
Yep.
after that at least.
But the only difference here was we had a welcoming party for him in Garland, and we didn't have in San Bernardino. Having people there that'll do something about it. So that's the threat. Usually one killer with a gun in a public place, and he's going to shoot X number of people until somebody acts to stop him. If the person that's going to stop him is 5 minutes away, you're going to have a big count. If the person that's going to stop him is close, then you're going to have a low body count. All right, so the training strategy, right? Define the threat. That's what I've tried to do here this morning. And then identify the most needed skills for that threat. The most needed. Now you can come up with a list of 30 skills, but then that's not a priority list. That's just a dang list. So the most needed skills, I think, to most successfully go up against this guy are not the same set of skills to go up against the parking lot guy or the rioter, right? Then once we identify the skills, identify what are the best methods to train those skills that are most needed. Then put those skills to work in scenarios. Now the reason there's this big leap here is because what I found is everything up through here is simple stuff shot on paper targets. When we then, okay, we've got the skills, right, that we've demonstrated on these paper targets. Now we're going to put the student in the scenarios where it's much more mentally complicated. So that is a huge leap for most students when they take that. It's not just the next step, it is a huge mental leap.